The morning begins exactly like yesterday. You wake up, open your eyes, and stare at the ceiling. For a few brief seconds, everything is quiet. Then the familiar current pulls you in. Work, responsibilities, notifications, things that need to be done. The day begins and you step into it almost on autopilot. Everything repeats. There's no major crisis, no disaster, but there's also no clear sense of moving forward. You stay busy sometimes, extremely busy, yet inside, something feels empty, as if each day drains your energy but never really takes you anywhere. There are moments when you stop and realize you want more than this. You want to build something meaningful. You want to change. You want to move forward. But the moment you try to define what moving forward actually means, everything becomes unclear. You're not sure where you're going. You only know that you don't want to stay where you are. You make to-do lists, long ones, but they rarely get finished. A few tasks get crossed off. Many are pushed to tomorrow, then to next week, then they disappear. You set goals, but they keep changing. This month you want one thing, next month something else. Not because you lack determination, but because you're not truly sure which direction is right. And slowly a heavy feeling settles in. Not despair, just exhaustion. Exhausted from always trying without seeing clear results. Exhausted from feeling like you're building something but never finishing it. Exhausted because every day feels like a draft that never quite gets written. If you've ever felt this way, pause for a moment. Maybe the problem isn't that you're not doing enough. Maybe you were never taught how to choose the right direction. We're taught that if we want to move forward, we need a plan. So we plan more, in greater detail, more carefully. We try to anticipate every possibility, every risk, every scenario that could go wrong. We believe that if we prepare well enough, life will stay within our control. But that is exactly where things begin to unravel. The modern plan is no longer a guiding compass. It becomes an attempt to control the future. Each goal comes with dozens of steps. Each step brings more conditions, more worries, more unanswered questions. The more detailed the plan becomes, the heavier the mind feels. Instead of clarity, we feel pressure. When everything is mapped out too precisely, fear quietly enters. Fear of making mistakes, fear of missing something, fear of choosing the wrong path. And so we prepare even more. We revise the plan, we wait a little longer. We tell ourselves that once everything is perfect, we'll begin. But that perfection never arrives. The more we prepare, the more we postpone. Slowly, we begin to confuse movement with progress. We do a lot, we stay busy. Yet deep down, we don't feel any closer to the life we actually want. Being busy doesn't mean having direction. Movement doesn't mean you're heading the right way. And each time a plan falls apart, even a small one, a crack forms in our trust in ourselves. We start to question our discipline, our ability. But rarely do we ask the right question whether the way we're planning truly serves the person we want to become. Does this sound familiar? The more you try to control life, the more direction you seem to lose. There is a paradox few people notice. Those who live with the greatest uncertainty are often the ones who hold the deepest clarity. Samurai stepped into each day without knowing if they would return. Battlefields, politics, honor, life and death, everything could change in a single moment. If anyone had a reason to control the future, it was them. But samurai did not do that. They did not plan in order to force the world to bend to their will. They understood that the world is always moving, always unstable, and beyond anyone's control. Instead of trying to grasp what was never theirs to hold, they focused on the one thing they could keep steady: their inner state. For a samurai, a plan was not a prediction of the future. It was an inner anchor, a way to keep the mind from becoming scattered in the face of uncertainty. Before any action, what mattered was not every possible outcome, but whether the action was coming from a place of clarity. A plan is not for the world. A plan is for the spirit. When the mind is calm, decisions become simple. There is no need to weigh endless possibilities, no need to chase every option. Inner clarity naturally points the way. And once a decision is clear, action is no longer fragmented. Each step is taken with full presence. This is why samurai could act decisively in moments where others hesitated, not because they knew the outcome, but because they knew where they stood. Consistency in action does not come from controlling circumstances. It comes from understanding one's own path. Samurai do not ask, "How do I succeed?" They ask, "Is this path truly mine?" To keep the mind steady in the face of uncertainty, samurai did not rely on complex plans. They followed a ritual that was simple, yet deeply refined, passed down through generations. A way of planning that did not begin with action, but with the inner state. They called it Seika no, the path of clarity. The first stage was always silence. Before any important decision, a samurai would pause. Not to think harder, but to quiet the emotions. They understood that a decision made while the mind is unsettled will always drift off course. Fear, impatience, or the urge to prove oneself can easily disguise itself as reason. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is observation. In that stillness, a samurai could see what was pulling them: ambition, fear of failure, pressure from the outside. Once these forces were recognized, they began to lose their grip. Only when the mind returned to a neutral state could a decision arise from clarity instead of reaction. If you always feel confused when making plans, the problem may not be the plan itself. After silence comes vision. Samurai did not ask, "What do I want?" That question often reflects a passing desire. Instead, they asked, "What does this action serve that is greater a duty?" A path, a way of living. When purpose is rooted at a deeper level, a plan no longer depends on the shifting moods of each day. Goals without roots are easily abandoned when difficulty appears. But when a goal is tied to core values, it becomes part of who you are. There is no need for constant motivation, no need for force. Action flows naturally because abandoning it would mean turning away from yourself. When you know why you are walking, speed no longer matters. The final stage is structure. Samurai did not write endless lists. They designed plans with very few steps, but each step was clear. Their plans were concrete enough to act on, yet flexible enough to adapt. Not rigid, not perfection-driven. Modern planning tries to account for every possibility. Samurai planning keeps only what is essential. Modern thinking assumes that more choices create safety. Samurai understood that too many choices scatter the will. They chose one direction and committed their full presence to it. Sometimes fewer choices create greater strength. After silence, after seeing the purpose, and after shaping a simple structure, samurai did not rush into action. Before committing, they always paused to ask a single question. A short question, yet powerful enough to strip away everything unnecessary. Is this path truly right for me? That question was not meant to search for perfection. It was meant to search for alignment. Alignment with the role they carried. Alignment with the code they chose to live by. And alignment with a direction they were willing to stay with even when things became difficult. If the answer was no, they let it go. Without hesitation, without regret, without trying to convince themselves that maybe they should try a little longer. For a samurai, letting go was not failure. Letting go was a conscious act, a way of protecting their life energy from being scattered across paths that were never theirs. Modern people often feel exhausted not because they do too much, but because they try to hold too many directions at once. Every unresolved choice pulls the mind slightly away. And when energy is divided for long enough, exhaustion becomes a permanent state. Samurai understood this clearly. They were not strong because they could do everything. They were strong because they did only what was necessary. Everything else was released so all of their strength could be gathered into a single path. What drains you is not a lack of discipline. There are too many directions pulling you apart. Philosophy only has value when it can be lived day after day. Seika no is not something meant to stay on battlefields or inside ancient texts. It can enter modern life if you give it enough quiet space. The first step is simple 5 minutes of stillness each day. You don't need to meditate the right way. You don't need a special posture. Just stop. No phone, no goals, no trying to think your way to an answer. Those 5 minutes are not for planning. They are for listening, for noticing where your mind feels tense today, what it's being pulled by, and what truly matters right now. From that stillness, a plan can begin to take shape, but not a long one. Just 3 parts. What is your purpose is, what will be the first step will be, and how you will continue when things become difficult. These 3 parts are not meant to create pressure. They remind you why you started and how to stay with it when your emotions shift. Then comes the hardest part: cutting away. Anything that does not serve this plan needs to be released. Not later. Not when you have more time. Now. Clarity does not come from adding more. It comes from having the courage to let go of what is no longer essential. Choose one fixed moment each day to return to the plan. Just a few minutes. Not to revise it, but to recommit. To remind yourself that today, no matter what happens, you still choose this path. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be fast. It only needs presence. And finally, remember that the goal is not perfection. A samurai's progress is not measured by speed, but by honor. Every step taken in the right direction, no matter how small, carries value. Each time you return to the path you have chosen, you are cultivating a deeper form of discipline. Discipline is not forcing yourself forward. Discipline is returning to the right direction each day. In the end, remember that a plan is more than a tool for action. It is a mirror of your inner state. When the mind is scattered, the plan becomes scattered. When you are pulled in too many directions, the path ahead grows unclear. But when the mind is calm, clarity appears naturally. You don't need to force yourself to know everything. You only need to know where you stand and which direction you are walking. You don't need to understand your entire life right now. You don't need a detailed map for every turn ahead. The only thing you need is a path that feels real enough to walk. A direction that, when you think about it, brings you closer to the person you want to become. Imagine a samurai standing in the fog. He cannot see the destination. He does not know what lies ahead, but he knows the direction he has chosen, and each step is placed with full presence. No hesitation, no distraction, no need for certainty about the outcome. Samurai do not wait for perfect conditions. They choose a direction and they walk it with presence.